Welcome everyone to this reading part 3, Reading for Information Analysis. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you that reading part 3, it focuses more on CLB 7 or higher. What does this mean? Well, this means that lower levels, 5, 6, you will find this reading more complex, but also part 1 and 2 are more important for you. Now, for those students who need 7 or higher, we should focus on reading part 3. We need to try to maximize our scores here more than in part 4, okay? So let's keep that in mind. Secondly, we do have this excellent reading part 3 tips and strategies video. I will leave a link in the description box to that video, and you can find it in our reading part 3 playlist as well. And that video will give you more details about what kind of strategies you can use for part 3 for managing time, for reading, and for answering the questions more effectively. Okay? So let's look at today's sample. And we're going to be doing a sample from volume 2 called The Hudson's Bay Company. So let's get started. So then, now everyone, I want to let you know that we will be doing this analysis together. By that I mean, I will be reading the information, I will be analyzing that information, gathering important facts, and then I'm going to be looking at the questions, and we're going to see whether the questions are in that paragraph or not. But I'm going to give you a chance to see if that information is there or not, okay? And as well, I will be defining some important vocabulary, which is important for higher level reading, okay? Now I'm just going to zoom in here so we can see more clearly. Okay. So here we go. Canadians love to shop at the Bay, it's true, also known as the Hudson's Bay Company. You can find this department store across the country. Okay, so it's about a department store in Canada called Hudson's Bay. This giant retail business has an interesting history, which dates back more than 300 years. Wow. It is the oldest chartered trading company in the Western world, with its origin closely tied to the beaver pelt trade. Interesting. So, wow, I didn't know it's the oldest retail business, okay, or chartered trading company, with its origin closely tied to, that means connected to, the beaver pelt trade, part of the history of Canada. In the 1600s, accessories made from beaver pelts were popular in many European countries. In particular, many men wore beaver pelt hats. However, their demand or need soon led to the near extinction of beavers in Europe. Wow, so extinction. The beavers nearly disappeared. Okay, they were almost all killed off. Okay. Thus, European explorers looked to Canada's wilderness forests for beaver fur since they had learned of Canada's many beavers from previous explorers. Okay. Okay. So this first paragraph gave us information about, well, this department store in Canada and a little bit about the history, how it began a while back, and also the reasons, because it says that Europeans were looking for beaver pelts because they used that in many of their accessories. Okay, so let's get to the questions. Question number 1. Acquisition of the Hudson's Bay Company by a foreign company. So acquisition means acquiring or taking over or getting. So it says that the Hudson's Bay Company was taken over or acquired by a foreign company. Was that one an A? No, right? It wasn't an A. It wasn't talking about that. 2. Historical economic symbolism bestowed on a well-known Bay item. So historical, we know. Economic, we know now. Symbolism, we should also know. Symbolizes, gives that meaning. Now, bestowed on means like provided or rewarded or honored on a well-known Bay item. So some Bay item or product which contains something about the history or something about the history and economic symbolism of that, maybe the Hudson's Bay. Okay. Was that one in A? No, we didn't really talk about a well-known Bay item. Number 3, the versatility of the company's economic operations during its early foundations. The versatility, having variety. Okay, having variety means versatility. During its early foundations, during the early creation of that company. So, did it talk about the versatility of its products or operations in paragraph A? Not really. It didn't really talk about like the products it was selling. No, I don't see that. So let's go on to number 4. Transition, change from traditional payment methods into modern monetary methods, payment methods, monetary about money. So this one means changing from traditional payment methods to modern payment methods. Did it talk about that in A? No, right? Number 5, historical trade partnership that evolved into the Hudson's Bay Enterprise. So a trade partnership that evolved into became the Hudson's Bay Company. Did it talk about that in A? Maybe. Well, I didn't see anything about trading here. It says the beaver pelt trade. Europeans came looking for beaver pelts, but historical trade partnership. I didn't see that there. No. Number 6, geographical landmarks. So some place or a landmark is like a very maybe famous or well-known place in geographical terms, so about the geography, the land, which made it easy, the naming of the company. So some place where it's located made it easy to name the company. Did it talk about naming the company in A? No, right? 7, the huge number of stores that have opened after 300 years. Did it talk about that in A? Well, I didn't see about the number of stores. I saw 300 years here, distraction, but doesn't talk about how many stores opened in that time. So no. 8, wildlife endangerment that encouraged explorers to hunt into Canadian territory. Wildlife endangerment. Wildlife is about natural animals, okay? Animals in the wild. Endangerment, being in danger. That encouraged, motivated, supported explorers to hunt into Canadian territory. Did it talk about that in A? I believe so. I believe so. Wildlife endangerment, we can connect that to extinction of beavers in Europe. So the beavers were endangered in Europe, or they were almost extinct, near extinction. So for that reason, it says European explorers looked to Canada's wilderness for beaver fur. Okay? So that's the reason why they came here. Well, one of the reasons. Okay, 9. The popularity of European fur accessories in the Hudson's Bay market. How popular European fur accessories were in the Hudson's Bay market? Did it talk about that in A? Something about European fur accessories. I see that here. Accessories made from beaver pelts were popular in European countries. Gave us some examples. Now, I see that there, but I don't see it saying that they were popular in the Hudson's Bay market or stores. So, I believe that that one is another distraction. Okay. It's not the exact information. And that's a way for us to see. I bet you anything that that's going to be E. The reason I'm going to say E right now is because usually when it has similar words, but it's not the exact sentence, it's usually E. It's trying to distract you. Okay. All right. So after the first paragraph, we should read the questions very carefully and we should have an idea of them. And so it'll be easier for us to remember those questions as we read the next parts. Okay. So let's go to B. At that time, Aboriginal trappers in Canada were supplying explorers with thousands of beaver pelts a year in exchange for items such as blankets, knives, axes, and guns. So this one here, it's talking about the Aboriginal trappers. So the Aboriginal people of Canada, they had some kind of trade with the explorers. Says Aboriginal trappers were supplying explorers. So I remember a question about that. I remember that. And that one was question number transition, historical trade partnership, geographical landmark, stores. So I believe it's 5. Now, it's not clear about evolved into the Hudson's Bay Enterprise, but let's see here the rest of the paragraph. In 1670, 2 French explorers, Merad Curé de Groseilliers and Pierre Esprit Radisson, asked King Charles II of England to sponsor them in expanding the fur trade. So they're not evolving, it's expanding. Impressed by the explorers' success in Quebec and eager to profit from the fur trade in Canada, the king agreed. He granted the French explorers, as well as a group of royal investment counselors, a charter and trading monopoly in Rupert's Island. This region covered a third of present-day Canada, including the vital port of Hudson Bay. The investors called their new company the Governor and Company of Adventures of England Trading into Hudson Bay. So, first of all, over here, we can see how this is now, this original trading partnership evolved into this here. So that's why number 5, like I said earlier, would be B. Okay. Now, I see over here another possible answer. This region covered a third of present-day Canada, including the vital port of Hudson Bay. The investors called their new company the Governor and Company of Adventurers of England Trading into Hudson Bay. Which question could it be? Acquisition of the Hudson's Bay Company, historical, economic symbolism bestowed on, the versatility of the company's economic operations during its early foundations, transition from traditional payment methods into monetary methods Geographical landmark that facilitated the naming of the company. The huge number of stores that had opened after 300 years. We already got the popularity of European fur accessories. So, 6, right? Number 6. Geographical landmark was Hudson Bay. Well-known or vital port of Hudson Bay. There you go. Made it easy to name the company because it was a Hudson Bay, port of Hudson Bay, and into Hudson Bay. So that's why they named the company Hudson's Bay. Okay. Okay, good. Very interesting. C. The company was an instant success. At first limited to the fur trade, the Hudson's Bay Company later added other activities, including merchandising, land development, and transportation. By 1870, the Hudson's Bay Company had transferred ownership of its region to the Canadian government. Stores were opened in Canada's thriving centers, which continued to operate in many of these locations. So let's stop here for a second. This one here, it's talking about other activities that the Hudson Bay was involved in. And that reminds me of a question. Huge number of stores, transition from payment methods into the versatility, operations, early foundations, historical symbolism bestowed, acquisition. So looks like it's 3, right? The versatility of the company's economic operations during its early foundation. So it says here it was involved in a variety of businesses over here. Okay, so that one is correct. Let's continue. With the decline of the fur trade, the company evolved into a mercantile business selling vital goods to settlers and prospectors in the Canadian West. Many people were coming to Canada, the Canadian West, so that Hudson's Bay was selling many products. They quickly introduced a new type of client to the HBC, one that shopped with cash and not with skins. The retail era had begun. As the HBC began establishing retail stores across cities in the prairies, Alberta, that's where I'm from here, in the prairies. With the sale of its northern stores and fur sales departments in 1987, the HBC completely left the fur trade. Okay, so I see here an important part that reminds me of a question. They quickly introduced a new type of client to the HBC, one that shopped with cash and not with skins. Cash, not skins. Number of stores that opened. It did say many stores opened across Canada, but it doesn't say huge number. And not after 300 years. It doesn't say that. Transition from traditional payment methods, historical economic symbolism. So looks like it's 4, right? Okay. So number 4. It changed from skins, well, the fur, the beaver pelts, to cash. Okay. Very good. So let's go to paragraph D. A popular item with shoppers even now, the Bay's famous red, green, yellow, and blue striped blanket was commissioned in 1779. This is a famous blanket, it's true. The traditional design of this blanket has 6 black lines, each representing the price that the First Nations people once paid for a blanket, since 1 black line equals 1 beaver pelt. 6 beaver pelts for 1 blanket. That sounds very expensive. Presently selling for about $450, the special design of this blanket reminds us of the Bay's long history in Canada. Okay, very interesting. I think this part is telling us about how this blanket represents this history and this price that the Aboriginal people are paying. And I think that that one connects with number of stores, historically when I was bestowed on, a well-known Bay item, and acquisition. So it looks like D. For number 2, D. So again, this well-known Bay item, this blanket, has some history and economic symbolism. It was put on there. The history, the origins of the blanket, and the Hudson's Bay, and the 6 beaver pelts that were paid. Very interesting. In July 2008, the company, after a series of change of ownership, was eventually acquired by the American private equity firm NRDC Equity Partners, which also owned United States department store chain Lord & Taylor. From 2008 to 2012, the HBC was run through a holding company of NRDC, Hudson's Bay Trading Company, which was dissolved on the 23rd of January 2012. So over here it talks about how this American company took over or acquired the Hudson's Bay Company. And that one is which question? The popularity of European fur accessories. No. So that one we can conclude is E. The huge number of stores that have opened after 300 years. Not that one. So we can conclude that one is E. It didn't talk about how many stores opened. And number 1, acquisition of the Hudson's Bay Company by a foreign company. D. Okay, everyone. Looks like we've got them all here. Very interesting. Okay. So, how did you do? Were you able to get everything? I hope so. I hope so. And that was very interesting. The Hudson's Bay Company. Yes, that's one major department store here in Canada. Okay, everyone. Now, I hope you were able to collect how we analyze information and how we use that information to answer the questions and how we kept on going from the paragraphs to the questions. Now, it was very important to read the questions clearly in the first part, right? That really helped us. Okay, everyone. So now I'm going to be leaving a link in the description box for you to practice this reading. So you can review the reading, practice it, and answer some new questions. This is version 2 of this exam, okay? So, everyone, it will be great for you to do this review, as well as let's remember to try to understand ideas. That's very important here. We don't only want to understand words, ideas. But at the same time, let's focus on vocabulary, because the more vocabulary that we can gather and the more vocabulary that we can learn, the better, okay? Also, let's remember about our CELPIP library. Now, our CELPIP library contains over 50 examples of reading part 3. This will be really great for you to practice more and more. So at the bottom of that link in the description box, there'll be a link to the CELPIP library where you can purchase a library pass. And look at this, discount code CELPIP79. You can get a 3-month subscription for $10.99. Great deal, everyone, and I strongly recommend it. Let's remember, practice makes perfect.